So probably within the next few months I'll be buying another used Range Rover or a used Land Rover for the channel because I think it's time to get something else in to make videos with. With that, I've been looking at used Range Rovers on and off for the past few months. If I miss something that you think is important, feel free to put that down below. First up, the one thing I want to mention is if you're looking at used Range Rovers, the biggest thing you need to look for, just right off the bat from the pictures, is for a level suspension. Now, sometimes the back will be a little bit lower than the front. That happens when the car adjusts itself after it's been sitting a while. That's typically a sign that something's gone wrong with the air suspension that needs to be looked at, and could be something that you don't necessarily want to start out with when first buying one. One thing I want to point out, on the older models, they had these headlight wipers on the front. A lot of these like to break. Most of the time one will end up pointed up here, the other one will end up pointed down. They'll just be off sync, or one of them will snap off. It's extremely common. Another thing you want to look for is the fog light surrounds right here. As you can see, these have fallen off. Moving around to the back, one of the biggest things you want to look for is moisture field in the taillights as well as the headlights. The taillights on these models are for some reason absolutely ridiculously expensive, even though it looks like a traffic stoplight from 1964. For some reason, they are extremely expensive to fix unless you find a used one that you can pop in here. But what happens is the seals over time start to crack, as most rubbery plastic pieces do. Moisture gets into the taillight, it can burn the taillight out after a while, but for the most part, it's not too much of a big deal unless you notice that there's a lot of moisture in it, in which case it's time to replace that. So as you can see, this one also has some damage done to the back right here. This isn't necessarily one I would buy, especially for $4,500, but the mileage isn't horrible for a 14-year-old car, but it's not necessarily something I would be interested in. Another thing that's common on older models like this is to have some rust right up under the door, behind the door right here. Again, it's typically just a little bit of rust, but nobody really wants any rust on a car that they've just bought. Moving on to the interior, as you can see, there's some leather that's buckled and rippled right here. It's a 14-year-old car. It's not really the end of the world. If that's the worst thing you have to deal with, then you're doing pretty well. So as you can see, the headliner around here looks to be in good condition. Everything else appears to be. The screen, I'm not entirely sure. Okay, so the air controls are working. The screen on this one's messed up. It's just on a black screen with a few pixels. The screens on the older models, it's an early 2000s BMW unit, and they do kind of suffer from dying. On top of that, there's a little screen right here that shows your trip information, stuff like that. It'll show faults and warnings that come up. On the older models, they like to pixelate and distort and kind of not show what's actually going on, so you have to kind of put the dots together. It's like an alarm clock that's kind of lost one of the lines on it. It's not necessarily something that's going to absolutely kill the deal, but it is something to look out for when you go and look at the car to make sure that screen is working correctly. Everything else appears to actually be in really good condition with this one, though. Those headrests do look a bit funky to me. But yeah, aside from that, it's missing an engine cover, or they've taken it off. I'm not entirely sure. But this one does have the cargo cover, which is actually something that would be nice to have. Mine, when I bought it, it didn't have the cargo cover with it. It's not a big deal. You can order them online. They're not ridiculously expensive, surprisingly, so you can just order those and get a new one put in. But yeah, aside from that, this model actually looks to be in pretty good condition. One of the things I want to point out on AutoTrader and sites like these, sometimes the Carfax is not available, or the auto check history. So a few things you can do: if you can find the VIN, which I'm not entirely sure if they've placed the VIN on here, but if you can find the VIN, you can go to Google, paste the VIN in, and it can pull up either accident history or maintenance history on some sites. What I would recommend doing, I'll show you this on one where I can find the VIN, is you can go to mycarfax.com, put the car in, and it will show you some of the service records. So it's a nice little alternative rather than having to go and buy the Carfax. Another one here, a 2005 Range Rover. They updated some stuff in 2005. But the main reason I have this one open that I wanted to point it out is this custom bodywork. It's atrocious. Whatever this is horrible. But one of the things I want to point out about ones with a body kit or something like this is it's very 2005. But when stuff like this has a body kit on it, it can sometimes infer that there's been previous damage to the car. Now, I looked at the Carfax on this one earlier. There's no accidents reported, but you wouldn't necessarily have to report it as an accident if you drove into someone and they didn't want to report it. But essentially, something like this would be a big turnoff for me personally, because it could infer that previous damage has been done to the car. On top of that, it looks just awful. And then this back here, this is just, it's atrocious. So this one I have on here just because it's cool. I just think this is amazing. If someone wanted to sponsor the channel, send this our way, that'd be great. So here we have a 2011 HSE Lux. It's actually very similar to mine, minus the interior. So it has 103,000 miles on it. It looks to be in pretty good condition. The outside looks to be in pretty good spec. I don't see any body damage or any paint rework or repaint. This looks a little faded back here in the back, but that could just be the lighting. If I were to go look at this car because of this alone, I would make sure that that paint wasn't messed up. And we can look at the Carfax here in a minute and see if it's had any accidents. But like I said, that could just be the lighting. They may have photoshopped the picture, but something with that paint just doesn't look entirely right, but I could be completely wrong. So it would be something I would look at if I was going down there. So tail lights look to be in good condition. There's no moisture in there that I can see. Wheels look to be in good condition, especially the front wheels. You can tell when a car has blown front lower control arms because the car will be out of alignment and either the outer ring will be worn or the inner ring back here will be worn. Most dealerships, if they're intelligent whatsoever, would put new tires on it and claim they never knew about it. But if you're buying one from a private party and you see the wear on the tires, that's usually a sign that the lower control arms or the control arms or something's wrong with the alignment and needs to be replaced. That's typically not a huge expense though. $800 should get you both front ones replaced for the lower control arms. Overall though, the rest of the car, the exterior looks to be in good condition. And the interior, the leather stretching right here in this model is extremely common. It's common in every car. As you get in and out, the Range Rover is so high up off the ground that when you climb in, it stretches the leather. You sit down, it stretches the leather. Get out, you get the point. So pretty much the leather right there is known to stretch. There's a little piece up here that's worn. That's not too common. That is something that I would keep an eye on to make sure over time it didn't get worse, but we'll get to that here in a minute. As you can see, this piece right here, that's not normal. It shouldn't be stretching and tearing like that, but for whatever reason it is. So if I were to buy this model, I would keep my eye on that because I wouldn't want the whole seat ripping. Another thing that's really common is as you get in and out of the car, the little buttons or pins that stick out of your jeans will often scrape this piece right here, especially if it's kept in a garage and you don't open the door all the way. And that causes that little piece to start to dig in right there. Mine has it. I don't think I've ever seen one that doesn't have it. It's extremely common. But yeah, everything else with this one actually seems to be in really good condition. There wasn't anything that I noticed on this one. So let's say that I was looking at one. This would be one that I would go and actually have inspected by a Land Rover dealership just to get their opinion on it. This key right here, I've talked about this a million times. These keys are known for ripping and tearing off. I have mine right back there and the entire front cover is about to come off. You can get a replacement key on Amazon. I think you can get two for like $60, and a Land Rover dealership will program it for about $120, somewhere in there. So overall, not too bad. Another thing we can see, this entire dashboard doesn't show everything, but there doesn't appear to be a warning displayed here. However, you would want to get there, hit OK on the steering wheel, which is right here, and hit show warnings just to make sure there was nothing going on with the car that it knew about and was pulling. So no accidents reported, no damage reported, 2 owners, 103,000 miles. One of the things I'm usually most interested in is what it was like after the warranty, how well they kept up the service, how they did everything with the service. It actually appears that they took pretty good care of it. If we look back through here, 90,000 miles service performed, 75,000 miles service performed, tires replaced, keys reprogrammed, usually always at a Jaguar Land Rover dealership. Everything with this one actually looks really good. I would take this one to a Land Rover dealership to have it inspected, and if I was looking to buy one like this, I would most certainly look into buying this one. Now, someone's probably already pointed this out, but timing chains around 100,000 miles, 120,000 miles, 80,000 miles, somewhere in there. The 5-liter V8 is known to have a timing chain issue, which the 5-liter V8 was used from 2010 to 2012 model years. It's still in production, but we're just looking at the L322s here. The thing about the timing chain, it's inevitable for people to bring it up, for people to talk about it. It's a huge expense. It's about $5,000 to $7,000 to have it taken care of and everything that comes along with it. You can do it yourself. You do need the specialized tools. There's a million things you can go into with it. As long as you get there and it's not showing signs of it, if you put money back just in case it happens, you'll be fine. The timing chain is almost like the IMS bearing issue in the Porsche 996. It's hard not to talk about it because it is a fatal flaw of the engine, but if it's not showing symptoms, if you put money aside, you'll be good. So yeah, overall with this one, I think it's in really good condition. It's one that I would go look at in person and get inspected. So next up here, we have a 2009 Range Rover Supercharged. I think this one's beautiful. The rims are very chromy, but I think this one's absolutely beautiful. 94,000 miles, actually has really low mileage for a 2009. But everything with this one, I looked through it earlier, everything looked pretty good. This is another one that I would go have inspected by a Land Rover dealership. I didn't notice any wear on the tires. Of course, they've probably been replaced, as they should be before you buy a car. This is the screen I was talking about earlier that gets really pixelated and some of the stuff just disappears. But yeah, everything else looks good. Camera works, backup camera, and the navigation system seems to be good. Everything else seems to be in pretty good condition with this one. There's that wear on the seat, which, like I said, is, if you find one without, go with that one because that person's taken very good care of it. Yeah, but everything with this one looks good. Let's go ahead and look at the Carfax. So let's look at the service history. So owner 3, purchased in Nevada, airbag recall, emissions, oil changed. That's a big jump right there. The one thing that scares me about this one after looking at it is the service history. There's really nothing on here that shows any good service history after the second owner. The second owner seemed to do pretty well with it. 60,000 miles, inspection completed, service performed. Yeah, the second owner seemed to take really good care of it. Differential replaced in 2012. Another thing I want to point out, if you constantly are seeing engine checked, and this is with any car really that applies to, stay far, far away. But yeah, so this is one I'd be interested in. I am curious about the service history from the previous owner, but it is one that I would actually be interested in going and looking at. So here's another 2011. This one's actually very close in mileage to mine. It actually looks quite familiar. So everything on the outside seems to be good. So there is also something you need to look for up here. There's this little rubber trim that goes around this, a weather strip, I believe they call it. They're notorious for cracking and falling down into this body panel, but that is something to keep your eye on. It's not the end of the world. In fact, every L322 I've seen has had this issue. Over time, I suppose it can lead to this panel starting to come loose and come off. So here's another 2006 with 210,000 miles on it. I'm absolutely blown away by this one. So what we'll just do is mycarfax.com. So all you would do, sign up for your account, log in, add the car. So we'll just go grab the VIN from this car down here, which was right there. And put car into Carfax, search for car. Is this your car? Sure. And then it's going to pull up everything here. So it says it has an open recall of the front brake hose durability. And if we could, sorry, what? $390 trade-in value. Right, but that would pretty much be how you would come in here and look for that. So catalytic converter replaced 80,000 miles ago. All right, so that's mycarfax.com. You can go through there and look through everything like that. And here's the last one. Again, very similar to mine. Pretty much gone over everything at this point that I wanted to go over. But those are the things I look for when buying or searching for a used L322. Next Friday, we're actually going to go over some of the things that you can look at as far as getting an inspection done and how to negotiate from there. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was extremely different from everything else we've done on the channel, but I get asked all the time to look at a used Land Rover on Cars.com or Auto Trader that someone's looking at. So I thought it would be interesting to show you that process of what I would go through if I was looking at a car. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.